off my head that's a fantasy book and not, bad.
We could always do the follow-up to Legends and Lattes.
My understanding is that's not a very good book.
Oh, really? I didn't read it
Yeah.
yet.
No, I haven't either, but a lot of people have been disparaging
Uh,
it, so I'm not sure.
oh, man.
We could
We're
do
live, by the way.
Oh, I know, I'm just blithering with you. Cursed cocktails. We could do that. That's meant to be quite
Oh,
fun.
okay. Yeah.
Um, we had a dark elf wizard coming back from the front line and like opening a bar with some guy he met, and they
That
do
sounds...
cocktails. Right. I'm looking at Twitch, and we seem to be offline. Oh no, we're online
I
now.
have a...
Okay.
Okay, good. I was gonna say, it's saying live at minute 21. We should be good. We should be kosher. I can hear you. You can hear me.
We are a
Okay.
happy family. Yeah, I think we're all good. We all good?
I think
Someone in chat tell us we're
so.
all good. Hello, chat. We are live. Probably.
Yeah, right.
Okay. We'll give it a minute until it's actually like start time, and then we can start with the show.
Yeah.
But yeah, Cursed Cocktails. I vaguely know the author, and he's a nice guy, so I thought we'd give it a go.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think that's a good call.
Yeah, I mean, I vaguely know Travis as well, but not well enough to sort of say, "Oh yes, my friend Travis Baldry."
Yeah, you can't name drop yet.
Yeah.
Yet.
Also, I'm fairly confident that I would not get a. Oh, hello! We have people here. Hello. Yes, we are
Hello.
live.
We
Screen is
are
still
live?
black. If you hit refresh, the same thing happened to me, Fane. That was why we had a little bit of confusion there. Yes, it is probably
Yeah.
live, maybe.
I have um
Oh, and Sam's here as well. Hello, everyone. Okay,
hello chat.
welcome to the second episode of Goblin Lit. It's like a book club, except with biting. This week, we are talking about our most favorite book we have ever read together,
It
Fourth
definitely
Wing.
deserved the 4.6 on Goodreads.
Oh, yes,
Definitely.
100%. Yep. Chiefs? Yes, hello.
I have those. No lipstick on them. We're good.
Yeah, I don't have any lipstick on mine either. We're all right. Oh, you said
Oh,
with
with
biting. Yes,
biting!
teeth,
Ah!
yes. Oh, this is how flesh loves
Tips!
flesh. This is teeth. Anyway, yes, we are talking about the romantasy sensation Fourth Wing this week, and we have some feelings about it, don't we, Amanda?
So as I mentioned previously, when we did our first episode, I did unfortunately pay too much money for a degree in creative writing. And in my early 20s, I really thought that I was onto some shit, saying that, oh, we should be allowed to write fantasy in my undergrad program. And I'm gonna have to walk that statement back. This book is why you do not let undergrads write fantasy.
Now, I'm going to try and not make any personal attacks about this book. I'm going to do my best. I'm going to maybe give
It's
you some
just
like background stuff that might be what's going on with it, but I'm not going to say this is what's happening or anything like that. But I'm
I mean, this
also,
book attacked me personally
I
with the
will
word
say,
chuff.
I, Finn, it is a 4.6 out of 5 on Goodreads. Chuff. So yes, out of 5 somehow. I understand that maybe for a lot of people it was maybe their first fantasy book. They're coming to it from the romance side, so I can understand why it would all be new and exciting because fantasy is new and exciting. Fantasy is awesome. Everyone loves fantasy once they start reading it.
Agreed. Mm-hmm.
I'm going to try and say some nice things about this book.
Yeah, I
Even
think we can get
though
some nice things.
yeah, like literally every time I picked it up, I was kind of dreading reading it, and I spent pretty much the entire time I was reading it bitching and moaning about having to read it, and going, "God, Amanda, why did you make me read this?" But these things happen. It's not the end of the world. It's fine. We'll okay. So I have two lists. I have a list of things I liked, of things I didn't like. The list of things I like, I figure we can get over in maybe 5 minutes, and then the rest of the episode can be the other one.
Okay, sure thing.
Um, I really like the idea that whoever controls the narrative of history controls everything. Like this idea that
I,
the little scribe's quarter is actually the power behind the throne, sort of thing. It's such a good concept that about a decade ago I wrote a book about it called The Wounded
yes.
Ones. It was the second Witch Vampire trilogy. And I really enjoyed writing that book, and I thought I did some clever stuff. And this touched on some of that same clever stuff. So yeah, good, all good.
Yes. Yeah, I
Um,
definitely agree. They nailed that aspect, and especially the like the containment of information aspect of things. A
yeah,
lot of
the
times you end up like to kind of like talk about a time when it's not like the best, I should say. You know, there have been times in D&D where we've been like dealing with something that acts or behaves like a military,
mhm,
and everybody is assuming that they all have knowledge. And I don't work in any capacity in any military, but I do have a vague understanding of how the chain of information works, working
yeah,
for a corporation, which is just the military but worse. And so you know, when I think about it and we're like working through these moments, I'm like, no, 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 you guys are assuming that everybody knows everything, and that's never how it goes down.
not
So I
even
really
slightly.
appreciated that at the very least, like you can. I mean, for me, maybe it's because I'm always looking for propaganda personally as a person. I was like,
Mhm.
this is propaganda right here. Why are they the bad guys? Why are
You
they the
see,
bad guys? They appear weaker. Why are they the bad guys?
you see, I really enjoyed that because that is classic fast propaganda. That's the enemy have to simultaneously be pathetically weak, but also this, they're weaker than our dragon riders. They're pathetic. They're riding on birds with cat bits, but at the same time, they have to be such a constant threat that they're a danger to our way of life, and we've got to be afraid of them. And what I really like, you're talking about the state's control over information being important.
Mm-hmm.
I actually like that they've rolled it into the religious aspect of the book as well because in the book, the religion of the book, when someone dies, you have to burn all their shit. That's how the religion works. You destroy everything that belonged to them, which means there's no personal writings, there's no diaries, there's no information except for the information that the state controls. And I thought that was very clever.
Agreed. Agreed. And it's interesting, like even when you think about how like the first years are not allowed to write home, it's like you
Hmm.
have to and like obviously when we talk about this we have to talk about just in general how militaries do tend to prey on, we'll say, folks with less developed prefrontal cortexes is what we're going to say there, who don't have the best decision making at hand, and like it plays well into that. I'll give it that for sure. But that does lead me to one of the points that I know we're going to discuss later. These characters, in my opinion, and this is my opinion only, were aged up and aggressively about halfway through the narrative.
The, it
And we'll
does
get to
feel
that
like a
later.
yeah, we will. That's on the not so good side of things. I agree with you, but yeah, we'll get into that once we're talking about bad things because God knows we've got plenty to talk about there. Um, yeah, so the fascism aspect of it was really well done, and it was done. I'm going to say subtly enough that if you weren't looking for it or you didn't know anything about fascism, it might have slipped past you, and you could be thinking that the main characters are the good guys, as opposed to
Mm-hmm.
the fact that they're wearing their lovely Hugo Boss black leather outfits and marching around and yeah. Um,
Yes.
I really liked the bonds with the dragons. The like it was very like the Perrin books,
Mm-hmm.
the Dragon Riders of Perrin and Anne McCaffrey, where the interactions between the different dragons affected the interactions between the riders. Like this idea that
Mm-hmm.
it's more than just a horse or something. There's an emotional bond there, and it all sort of flows through.
Yeah, exactly. No, you're definitely keen on that, Sam. Themes were interesting. Execution, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, the
We'll
the
get there when
themes
we
were
get there.
interesting. it touched on
Yeah.
interesting themes.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say it did a great job with any of them, but it at least was interesting in that respect. Like I could appreciate that, and
Yeah,
that
definitely.
and like the whole thing. They've got wards around their whole kingdom, stopping what were allegedly enemies, but as it turns out, are refugees coming
Yeah.
in, and
Right.
obviously that feels like a really reflective of the world's current political state, where everyone's you're raising their walls against enemies who are actually just people trying to flee from oppression and death elsewhere. But what gave this book its uniquely American flavor was the way that you're simultaneously condemning, these people behind the walls as refugees, condemning the whole institution, saying, "Oh, it's terrible that we don't let these people in," while still simultaneously worshiping the military as heroes throughout the whole thing. And at the moment that they are aware of what's going on, all those military men abandon their posts and go off and do what's good and right. It's like, really? Is that how that's going to go? Or are they going to follow orders like they've been told to since the day it started?
Or are they gonna do what they get paid to do?
Hmm.
Right.
Um, right. Other nice things to say about fourth book. The back third of the book
No.
had better pacing. Like it was okay. It contained all the sex scenes, which was an experience, but it was still moved along at a better rate once we got to the kind of book that the author
Yeah.
obviously wanted to be writing.
Some of the things I did enjoy, especially when we get back to dragons, is like I did enjoy like a lot of times we find that writers will use the dragons less as intelligent beings and like take away almost their sort of agency sort of thing. I always
Mhm.
love having like intelligent dragons, right? Like especially
I love that.
D&D style, like they're smarter than the humans a lot of the times, dragons. And I also
Yeah.
love that it's not all like hippie peace and love, like the dragons tell them everything, right? I like
Hmm.
that they lie to them. I like that they have their own selves, personalities. I like it's enjoyable.
Yeah,
I grew up on the
they've got their
Aragon
own.
books, which were not great.
No,
But
no, they're
no, they're bad. They're so bad. But when I think about the dragons themselves, the main character's dragon there is yet another woman to prop up this man for self-development, whereas at
yes.
least here they definitely have their own like flavor and characteristic. I thought it was
Yeah.
interesting that she got the dragon of her brother's ex-boyfriend who died for him. You can't tell me fucking otherwise. That's some homo shit. You do not die to revive your best friend unless you are in love with them. So once again, Rebecca waving hello, I love the gays. I just,
Maybe we'll get into that. The gays are also going to be in the things I didn't like part of this, which is an interesting sentence to come out of my mouth. But no, the way the treatment of queer people in these books is something.
questionable.
Yeah,
It's worth discussion.
it's worthy of discussion. Yes, it was an
Yes.
experience. Let's say, and that's me
Yes.
entirely out of nice things to say about this book. So you go ahead.
The only couple of nice things I had to add is just the one was that um, Zayden's story is compelling,
Yes,
right? He's a very interesting character.
he is, and
Imogen's a very interesting character.
mhm,
Liam's a very interesting character. They're all actually kind of interesting. I did enjoy it. Like, she definitely understands what oppression genuinely looks like.
yeah,
And so, like, I did enjoy that fold of it. Now, unfortunately, I did myself the favor of reading a summary of the next book,
hmm
and I don't think that I don't. I already knew I wasn't going to buy the second book, but I can definitely say that after reading the synopsis of it, I'm for sure not doing that because leave
good
this
choice.
poor man alone. Just leave him alone. Let him rest. Let him die. Would you please?
Yeah, I mean, Zayden was probably the most interesting character in it. I think we definitely needed the princess main character who's what was the phrase you used this week? Was it
She's a
princess
nepo
privilege?
baby. She's a
Nepo baby.
nepo baby.
Yes, that was it. Yes, princess privilege was, and it was important to have her as the main character, but it was also very
Oh,
disconcerting to see her be like, Oh, your dad's a traitor. I'm glad my mum burned him alive in front of you. It's like, what the fuck is wrong with you, lady? You don't say that to anyone.
Well, like, and the part that kills me, the whole narrative, it is that she's supposed to be the smart one, the intelligent one, the one who's looking for the signs, and she isn't. She's very, listen, she's very Bella Swan about this. Bella Swan is supposed to be the smartest girl in the room, okay? And all that girl ever did was just study obsessively when her boyfriend broke up with her and get good grades. Like, sorry, not sorry. The perception is not here. Like, her repeating and reciting back facts of history makes her more autistic than, like raw intelligence. We
I
know that she's bad with social situations. We know this, okay? My love, my
Mhm.
darling. Like, can we please, if she's going to be the smartest person in the room, at the very least, can she make some of the decisions that go with that?
I it's difficult because on the one hand, I think that the reason she was called the smartest person was so that they could have her reciting info dumps throughout the entire book and informing us, the reader, of the world building, which it isn't a demonstration that the character is intelligent. It's a demonstration that you, as an author, have failed to share the information you want to share.
Yeah.
Um, I think it definitely ties into the problem of writing clever characters when basically you can't write characters that are smarter than you as a general rule. You can sometimes fake it
Hmm?
because you've got a lot more time to think about things and come up with good ideas for them to come up with on the spur of the moment. But the only way that you can really make a character like her appear smarter is to give her information that nobody else in the world has. Like, give them almost omniscient information about the world. And
Right.
honestly, the author just doesn't seem like she grasps how smart people actually behave or think.
Yeah. And
And I'm
like,
not.
that's the underlying problem is that like when we're looking at somebody who's meant to be this really analytical, raw, like informed decision maker, we
Mhm.
would expect like even if you're not like say quote unquote smarter than your character, at the very least show us the process of making an informed decision based on that information. You might not be able to make her seem smarter than everybody else, but her decisions could be smarter, and that can
Yep,
cover some of that gap.
absolutely. Um, I think the other problem that we had was, I'm not going to say again. I'm trying not to make this personal attacks on the author because it's not fair.
Oh, definitely not.
But it does feel a lot of the time like the plot twists were being really blatantly signposted in such a
Yeah.
way because it felt like the author just didn't trust her readers to get the foreshadowing unless they're being smacked in the face with it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's stuff like the orange allergy that came up at one point,
Yep.
which would have been a really cool little twist if we'd seen her subtly picking up hints of this throughout the thing, as
Mhm.
opposed to someone standing next to the character who has the allergy eating an orange and he screams, "Get that toxic shit away from me." That's
Yeah.
not subtle foreshadowing. That's just, there's a cat on your face. Hello,
The best
Zuko.
thing
We
to
all
do
love
is
you.
ignore him.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's
Oh
not going to
no.
work, I don't think.
Show your little dumb face.
You're a really cute cat.
Okay. I'm putting him in the window. Carry on.
Ah, jeez. Okay, well, going back to what we started talking about, the lack of maturity of the characters.
Yes, which I think definitely is part of it, that she's not that developed in her thinking, is because this
Mhm.
book she was definitely 16 originally.
Yeah.
I think we got
It,
to the scene in the middle. And once again, let me remind everybody this is going to be a spoiler full review. We're going to discuss the full context of this book.
I mean, we've already spoiled
So,
like 90% of the plot twists in that one.
right, exactly. So, like, let's just make sure we're all aware here. This, if you're intending to read this book, get off the street.
I mean, if you're intending to read this book, just get the hell away from me anyway. I mean, Jesus fucking Christ, this fucking book.
But I
I'm
think
joking.
we
I'm
got
joking. It's a fine
to
book.
the scene. I think we got to the scene where the one girl's being killed as
Mhm.
retribution, and that is the point in which the editor's like, age this up, age this up. First of all, they
Yeah.
don't have the prefrontal cortex decision making to even hold this tribunal. This has got to be aged up, and this is
Mhm.
way too fucking dark for YA.
Yeah, see, I genuinely didn't even think that scene was particularly bad. Like, compared to other YA books, it's not really. I mean, you think about shit like the Hunger Games, a lot darker stuff's happening to a lot younger characters. I genuinely
It
think
just
what's
doesn't
happened.
match the rest of the narrative.
Oh no, it doesn't because the pacing and tone is all over the place. But I think genuinely what's happened is the book's been written, it's been handed to an agent. The agent has said we can't publish a book with teenagers having sex in it, so we need you to age it up. And I genuinely think that's the entirety of why the characters are in their 20s instead of being teenagers, because it's a school book. Like
Yeah.
it is children doing the
Yeah, it is. Like the lunch table scenes. Oh my god. I'm like listening to this and I'm like, especially as like having been in a gone to an American university, right? Like it's just not how it goes down. Also, I'm sorry, but like there was a point when I was reading this, like a third of the way through, I was like, this woman is minimum 42 years old. And then I looked it up, and she is. She is. She's
Yeah.
at right at that age group. And the problem that I have and how this impacts her book, and again, this is not a personal attack in any capacity,
It
but
is me.
sometimes you have to acknowledge that you're not interacting enough with the people of the age group of this book to actually capture their voice. And like that's the big core issue I have right there is that nobody says epic anymore. We said epic 10 years ago.
You're not wrong, and I mean, it's interesting. There's our through theme between the two books that we've talked about on this so far: the use of modern slang and things in a setting where there shouldn't be modern slang. But while one book did it very deliberately, this one just seems to be doing it because she's trying to be one of the cool kids.
Right.
Um. So yeah, but I fully believe that the aging up was for the explicit sex. That was the only reason, and I wouldn't mind if the sex was interesting.
I agree. In that, like, honestly, I think the dragon should have been fuckable.
When I
Uh,
found out that this was a romance about the dragon riders and not a human romancing the dragon, I was pretty let down. Like my
yeah,
interest
same.
fell off fast. And then
It
this is
just
the thing. I know a lot of people from the fantasy community don't like this book, and a lot of people in the romance community are accusing them of saying, "Oh, it's a bad book because it has spicy scenes in it or whatever." But no, this isn't spicy enough. This is very bland,
no. They admit they
unimaginative.
did not do a singular style of like act like penetrative sex. That it was all missionary.
They had what was it?
What?
We were both like, "Wait, you had missionary 8 times in a night? Boy, howdy, how exciting!"
Oh, so much fun. Right? Like, what? Also, I just, it was so cringy to me that her powers were always it's very, again, the Twilightification of things. It's giving Edward breaking the headboard, you know? And it's just really frustrating when you're reading a book, right? So, like, you know that the context of this book is that there's supposed to be spice in here, and I'm like, all right, let's do some weird shit. Like, I'm ready to just go ahead and understand the world as you do, and it's the same. Like, I'm sorry, I'm divorced to a straight man, and I didn't want to go through that again. Like, and he's 20 years old. I'm sorry, nobody at the age of 20 is good at sex. No one is. It doesn't matter your gender. You just don't know enough. You haven't been around long enough, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. And so, oh shit, I think we lost our co-host. Hold please while we. Hello, hang tight.
We're back. We're so back. Hello.
All right, good,
The hell did
good.
you do?
I didn't do anything. I actually have a fidget. This is the fidget rock to keep me from fidgeting with things on the stream. This is so I don't touch things.
Good choice.
Yes, but it just like I wish that she would just let them be their age, but they're not. They're like 35 minimum. They are 35 years old. And like, okay, so it's already adult. Why do they need to be 20? Like, I'm sorry, I am in my 30s and I look at 20-year-olds and they look like, acne riddled teens. So like just age them to the appropriate age. Say this is the military and this is military training. Take the schoolish aspect out of it, because when we get to the concept of her being a nepo baby, she lives at the fucking college.
I can tell you why we can't take the school aspect out of it. And
Hit
that
me.
is because, okay, this is going to take some build up, so bear with me,
All
okay?
right.
in romance, there's a big subsection of authors who write on tropes. They write based on tropes. They go through all the different romance books. They find out which tropes are trending. They write a book based on that. And what I was told when I was gainfully employed doing this was you're writing for Marge Simpson. You're trying to produce the blandest thing that's going to appeal to the blandest housewife you can imagine. And that is what you want for your romance book. Now, what's happened here is she's trying to write in that exact same method, which I'm not shitting on. I like, you got to make your money,
No.
you got to pay the
Yeah.
bills. By all means, she's gone through, said, here are the tropes that are popular: dragon riders, school stories, your Harry Potter, your Aragon, whatever was trending for YA. She's gone through those all, picked them out, mashed them together, made her story. And it's all about ticking the boxes of the market. And that's what she's done. She's moved from romance, which is ticking all the boxes, to fantasy, which is ticking a different set of boxes. So that's why it has to be school story, because that's what's the trope.
Yeah. I mean, that's a fair assessment. I think that it does a disservice to the writing to do it that way. Like,
A lot of
take out
stuff
all the
does the
school
distance.
aspects of this. Yeah. Take all the school aspects out of this, make them 35, and I have significantly fewer problems with the general setup.
Yeah.
Like,
Um,
this is the military. Okay, I follow. I get that.
See, I would have a problem with it because the way that the characters speak and everything is still so immature that I mean, it's very frustrating because you've got your human characters who are meant to be adults who talk like they're teenagers, and then you've got your dragon characters who occasionally talk like they're human and sometimes talk like they're human teenagers, and it's like it's frustrating. The voice just isn't right,
Yeah,
and that's kind
they're
of one of the
definitely
bigger
inconsistent.
yeah. And I think honestly that's kind of my big problem across the board. The fact that the voice just isn't right. Like I'm sure this is an author that does really, really well in writing contemporary romance because the voice
Yes.
is perfect for, especially for young adult romance. It's perfect voice for that, but
Hmm.
it doesn't really fit into a fantasy setting properly. It doesn't
Right.
mesh, and
No.
it I like it's the same with the world building. It's very inconsistent because I personally think it's because it was all focused on getting the tropes in rather than getting any serious world building in, and there's all these sort of the tropes just overpower everything. Like logic, story building, world building, it's all irrelevant. You have to stop and admire how sexy someone is every few lines.
Yeah, which again, like the romanticy aspects of it. You're right, or what you like the demands of both of those two make for an awkward narrative, and they make for a narrative that feels in some spots like, okay, all right, we've got something here. That latter third of the book, okay, we've got
Hmm.
something here, but like the
But
first two chunks, like you're like, man,
but it's difficult because there are
like
good romantic books out there. There are good books that fuse romance and fantasy in beautiful ways. I mean, think about stuff like Cushiel's Dart and all the rest of it. They take the time to do the work to build a world that supports whatever spicy little fantasy you're trying to write about, instead
yeah.
of just mashing stuff together. I'm not going to describe it as lazy. I just think it was done. I think the book has been done a disservice by the way that it was written.
Yeah, it's like I said, like when I was writing my notes, the thing that I said is that it feels like the cake is half baked in
Yeah,
that way.
yeah. It needs more,
Yeah,
and
and
it's
you want to like the book, but I think that you're hitting kind of on the an undertone I also wanted to talk about, which is how aggressively it was marketed. Like
mhm,
all of my interests are not. I have so few interests in romance books, like in an algorithmic way, and
mhm,
zero interest in books that don't prominently feature queer like folks. And I'm still getting ads for this. If I'm getting ads for this one, I don't get ads for literally anything that has to do that's
yeah.
popular in those spaces. Like it's really aggressively being marketed, and I do think they thought they had another Hunger Games on their hands. Like
They
I
really
really
did.
think that that's what they thought.
And I mean, by the numbers, it's making great sales. It's doing the numbers, but it just isn't a problem in traditional publishing as a general rule is that they will pick a book that they've decided is going to be successful and they'll market it until it's successful and then
Right?
use that as evidence that they can pick good books.
Yeah.
and um, like it's obviously a self-fulfilling prophecy, but you see it all the time where a book will get published and everyone will be like, this is the one that's going to win all the awards this year. Because they've already decided before it's published that this is the one that's going to win all the awards this year.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, okay, but like all you're doing at that point is just manipulating data. Like we were in a we were in an what is that called? An airport in another country, and I was given a
Mm-hmm.
bookmark for Fourth Wing.
Mm-hmm.
I was in airport in Mexico given a bookmark for, and so
Yep.
like to think like how hard we're pushing this book. It just it
It's wild.
frustrates me because I read The Hunger Games as they came out, right? Like I picked it up before it was big, and so I can remember the elements that made it gain steam, that made me as a 15-year-old want to tell all my friends, like, you have to go get this book, tell your parents to go
Yeah.
get this book for you. And it's because, well, one of the things is that the struggles of the main character are worth relating to, or rather, let me rephrase, let me take that back. The struggles of the main character are far more empathetic than what we see Violet go through.
Yeah.
And Violet's struggles would feel a little more relevant if the struggles of those around her weren't so much higher stakes.
Yeah. Like, yeah, I understand that. Like it's protagonist centered morality, isn't it? Everything's okay as long as it's about her.
Right.
And normally you get a little bit of that, and then the book pulls the rug out from under you, and the character realizes they've been a bad person, they do better. But no, throughout this whole book, Violet is your sort of moral guidance of what is right and wrong, and she's the fucking worst. Like she's just the absolute fucking worst. To make Violet better, everyone else in the world has to be made worse as well.
Yeah, pretty much.
Like, okay, so there's this plot line throughout it where instead of training to be better, she chooses to poison the people that she's up against, which guarantees that she's going to win. And I kind of feel like that's almost what she's done with the whole setting is she's poisoned the
Yeah.
whole world so that she can win. Like her
Yeah.
presence within it is poisoning everything else. But like I enjoy a good villain protagonist. I just wish she would acknowledge she was the villain protagonist.
Correct. Yeah, and like not only that, she was doing through ill-begotten means. Nobody else has a literal two siblings have passed through this school and annotated this journal and given you Ned's school survival guide. Sorry, Brandon's school survival guide to not dying at War College, right?
Yep,
Uh, and yet, we don't ever acknowledge that. The only reason she knows who she's facing is because her older brother told her, right? We don't acknowledge that the only reason she can even utilize this advantage, her intelligence, is
mm-hmm.
through things given to her by other people. And I think it undercuts her abilities, like as a character. It essentially sells her short of the
Absolutely,
intelligence we could have been appreciating in her character. It wasn't
absolutely.
smart or tactical for her to poison people. It was just she was given information and she leveraged it in a way that if she had just acknowledged the parts of that are kind of fucked up
Mm-hmm.
about, or even like had a shred of guilt about it, like it would have felt better.
Well, that was it. Like by the end, she was making jokes about it. It was just
Yeah.
appalling.
And you're
And
just like, what?
I think like there's a lot of contrivance in the book. Obviously, she happens to be hiding up the right tree at the right moment here with a secret meeting. She happens to be here. She happens to be there, and I think it's because, as we were talking about, she's the center of the book. She's the most special girl in the world.
Yeah.
She's got the two most special dragons. She's got the most special boyfriend. She's got the most powerful magic. She has every conceivable advantage that could be given to any character given to her right from the beginning, and still she barely scrapes by.
Yeah. And like if we were trying to lean into making that something, lean into it. Like, yeah,
Yeah,
you could absolutely make and sell something out of that would be unique, that would give this some
absolutely.
substance.
That would be really cool if you have someone that's been given every advantage in life and barely scrapes by because they're such a fuck up. That's an interesting story, but what we're seeing here isn't that. It's the
No.
narrative trying to justify why she is justified in all the awful shit she's doing. Like, you've heard of plot armor, where a character
Oh,
can survive. She has got literal plot armor made out of dragon scales. Like,
yes.
someone hands her a set of armor made of dragon scales that is impenetrable to knives, so she doesn't get stabbed the 800 times people stab her.
Yes. Constantly, consistently. And you're just like, oh my god. On the subject of the world has to be worse, I remember when we were kind of going back and forth finishing reading this, both of us are asking ourselves, why is Jack Barlow here?
Yeah, why the fuck is he here?
And
Why
here's the
why
reason
would you
why.
allow this psychopath to exist in the story? Go on.
The reason why. Zayden wasn't occupying that role as the love interest. He
Hmm.
normally would have occupied that role, unquestionably trying to kill her, because
Yeah,
the motives make more sense for Zayden than they do for Jack Barlow.
absolutely. There's no motive for Jack Barlow. But
None,
honestly,
zero,
like
zip nada.
the
It
whole
gets to the
thing,
point where it's almost comedic to see him enter a scene and be like, "I'm gonna fucking kill you, Violet." You know?
he's a joke after a certain. Well, I think after the first couple of scenes where you realize literally nothing bad can happen to the main character, it stops
Yeah,
being there stops being any tension. But also, yeah, it's Zayden could have been an imposing threat, and the slow drift from that to a love interest would have been fascinating.
right.
But we didn't do that. They had to have the love at first sight and the oh my god, he's
Well,
so handsome. Like I've just walked into this man who is definitely going to murder me. Gosh, he's so pretty.
right? Like, yes, his lips were carved from marble. Like, I get it. I do. I understand wanting to convey attraction. But if I have to hear about his dark curly hair one more fucking time, it's gonna be my 13th reason. I'm done. I'm out. Like, it
Yeah,
would
all
have been
the
so much more
possible
interesting
asymmetry.
to have. And like, I appreciated the parts of the story where Zayden's like looking out for those that he's taken charge for, like all of that, right? Like, I appreciated all of those parts. They were genuinely interesting. That's what kept me going through this book. But it wasn't the main character. And I think that, when we talk about plot armor, we talk about all that. I think what we're getting into talking about is that she's a self insert character.
Yeah,
Everybody wants
um,
to be the smartest person in the room,
everyone does,
you
and
know?
everyone wants to be constantly proven to be right, even when they're wrong. And everyone wants to be the most special girl in the world, as we were saying.
Yeah, pretty much. Everybody wants to be the most special girl in the world, but it cheapens the novel's story to not have us work for anything.
I think the other problem I had with it is how mundane everything was. Like maybe it's because of the character, maybe it's just because of the style of writing, but nothing ever felt fantastical.
G
Um,
absolutely wants to be the
yes,
most special girl in the world.
I am the most special girl in the world. Thank you very much. Now, yeah, the whole book just felt mundane,
Yeah.
um, and I think again this is maybe coming from what she was writing before to this because good fantasy has a mythic quality to it.
Mm,
Even small stories, you still have that little moment where you sort of feel it in your chest, like,
yeah.
oh, this is a bigger thing than me. And it just never happened. And I think a lot of that problem is that there's no stakes.
Yeah. Pretty much.
Uh,
Like, as we're reading through the book, like I know that we're gonna have a "We Are the Fire Nation" moment, right? But
mhm.
even then, as you know it, you can feel it through the entire narrative. You're just like, okay, but then what? Like,
Yeah. Because again, there's no trust in the reader to put stuff together themselves. So everything was so foreshadowed that there's no surprises. But
no.
it was just, it was a very frustrating book to read because you can see little seeds of what could be good in it. You could
Yeah.
see little seeds of good ideas, but it's just not been written with enough care about what it is. It's just been written. The story is too focused on the characters, if that makes sense. Like their
It's
perspective just warps the whole world around them.
yeah.
And it just means that all the world building and everything, the stuff that sort of makes fantasy, it's full of little niggling contradictions all the way through it. Like they've got magic that can do anything. Like there's no limitations on the magic. You've got people that can see the future. You've got people that can shoot lightning. You've got people that can heal people when they're dying. There's no limits at all on magic. It can do anything, but it just doesn't.
Yeah. Like,
Like, I mean, we were talking about the plot armor earlier on. The ability to make large things smaller and then resize them again. And yes, absolutely. It took away all the plot points because it's so focused on giving these characters their time to talk about how pretty one another are. It's just,
Right.
it's the tropes overcoming everything. Again, it's the romance.
It- and like again, it could have been done well to be more focused on the characters. Cozy fantasy as a genre is really doing well, but this book was marketed as a high fantasy, high stakes, the world could end novel, and so
Hmm.
it suffers from definitely being a romance, much heavier romance than it is a high stakes novel. And trying to be both, we get 50%, jack of all trades, master of none.
Hmm.
I think that when we contextualize, this is her first big step into fantasy. All right, I can be a little more generous with that.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, this
it
is the thing.
definitely nails a lot of the bases.
I am willing to forgive a lot, especially with a new author in the genre. I always am,
Mhm.
but it just it just doesn't work. It just
Yeah,
fundamentally doesn't work, and it's because there's just a lack of imagination. Like there is no thought put into each step of it. There's no looking at it and saying, okay, this person can do this, which would lead to all these things changing in the world. This person can do this, so that would lead to all these things changing in the world. We've got this magical plague going on beyond their borders because actually there's a third type of person that can use magic that we just don't know about. And it doesn't actually have any influence on the story or what's happening.
right. Like we get to that We Are the Fire Nation reveal, and the focus of it is like the romance, and it's like, but you just found out your entire world is a lie. Like that should be shaking you to your core, and so as the reader, it's really frustrating of an experience to understand, like in your mind, right? Like when you would like say to yourself, like, this is my entire world upended,
Hmm.
and we're so focused on like that this is quote unquote Zayden's betrayal, and she's meant to be like a moral compass, all of this, and it's like, okay, but
How is
listen,
there a
either
betrayal
you
here?
drink the Kool-Aid or you don't. You
Yeah.
drink the Kool-Aid or you don't. Because in those moments she drinks the Kool-Aid, but in other moments she doesn't tattle on him, and it's like, oh my god, girl, you've been empathetic to their cause the entire time.
Yep. But she needs to have the betrayal so that the relationship can be put in danger because this is the third act of a rom com and he has to make it up to her somehow. And yeah, it doesn't quite mesh with the story.
Yeah, again, it suffers to be two genres in these moments, because
Yeah.
like,
And again, there's so much good romantic fantasy out there. There is like, I
yeah,
mean, you have you read Sarah J. Maas and all of her work?
no, I haven't.
Well, you see, I kind of suspected you would have because you seem like the kind of person who would like fairy porn.
I read a lot of fairy porn much earlier.
Ah, I
And from
see.
what I understand about the Sarah J. Maas stuff, first of all, there's not very many gay people in it, so
Of
that's
course.
why I haven't picked it up.
That would do it.
I just, I've read enough straight romance in my life. I'm sorry, it's the same thing over and over and over again. I need something a little fresh and new. So, but
I'm with you. I know.
I've listened to full explainer podcasts on it.
Well, good. But my point is, if you're looking for a romantic fantasy book, there are books out there that are doing it and doing it really well. But this isn't it.
I mean, I'm gonna be honest, Fane. They're absolutely correct. They're correct. I can't deny that. I am absolutely the person that this fairy point should be marketed to. They very much tried to get me to buy those too.
Yeah. And again,
But
no,
I
I
tried to
mean,
read Throne of Glass and couldn't. So
well. Sometimes you just bounce right off the straights. Out here with the read, yes, yeah, very much so. Uh,
they're wearing glasses.
um,
It makes sense.
yes, that's it. I had one really big problem with this book,
Oh, I think
and
we're about to get to the same problem I have. Hit me with it. I'm ready.
okay, I well, you've got your problem that I know. Any Fane, I'm not fussy. Um, so I had a real problem with this book, which I think is different from your problem with the book, which is the thing that I'll let you talk about. My problem with the book was the message about disability. Like everything else throughout the book, yeah, maybe it wasn't great. Maybe it was made it into a bad book compared to what it could have been, but it was all fairly harmless. what the disability message in the book did was actually quite harmful, because the message is you should push yourself to do things you know are going to cause you harm because your parents told you to. And I don't know if you've met any actual disabled people in your life at any point. I've been disabled for some periods of my life, and I cannot imagine anything worse. Yes, it is. I don't even know if ableist is the full extent of it, because the writer, she does suffer from the same condition as the character, adding more credence to your self insert theory. But you can do anything no matter what your disability is inspiration porn for able people. That's not a reflection of the reality for people living with disabilities. Pushing past your limits when you're a disabled person doesn't make you an inspiration, it makes you more disabled.
Yeah.
It leaves you useless and incapable and in pain and miserable. And that leads me into pain as well. Yes, toxic positivity. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Being in constant pain doesn't make you tougher than other people. It makes you much worse. It saps all your resources. It leaves you exhausted. You can adapt to it, but you're always working from a position of limitation. And I'm wondering if maybe it's coming from a religious aspect, where this idea, this weird sort of proto-Protestant idea that martyring yourself and suffering makes you a better person, because it just doesn't. And even within the context of the game world, game world, the book world, Fane's just made a very good point, which it sounds like the world's voice became the inner voice of the author, which bled into the book. And I
Yeah.
think you're absolutely right. I think they've internalized some awful shit and put it into here. But um, still continuing on the disability topic without digging too much into that, astronauts need to be healthy. If you've got a disability of any sort, you're not going into space. And it's not because NASA hates disabled people. It's because if one person dies in space, so this is actually going back into the sort of in-world logic of this whole thing. If a person dies in space, then it creates a massive problem for the mission. Dragon riders are even more important within the context of the story than an astronaut on a mission would be. Each one of them has a unique signet power, their magic, which no one else in the world can replicate, which can absolutely determine the success or failure of any mission they're sent on. So
Mm-hmm.
the idea of having standards lower than for astronauts when it actually should be higher is ridiculous. And what's even more frustrating is the story constantly demonstrates why someone with her disability shouldn't be in physical combat. I mean, the first time she's in a training fight, she gets her arm pulled off.
Yeah.
Like it's just putting her into situations where just her constantly putting herself into these situations where she's going to do harm to herself isn't inspirational. It's irresponsible, both within the context
I
of the story and in real life.
I heavily agree there, and like it was very frustrating to watch, just like again and again and again, and like okay, we have magic that can do literally anything, and you're telling me that we don't have a person smart enough in the room to figure out some sort of, we can't find a magical item that'll help her, that will, in some way, shape, or form. It's not going to cure it because that's not the right answer either, but that's going to make it so that she's part of this.
Mhm.
And hello, hi, how's it going?
Cat number two.
Sorry, cat number two.
Well, this is a problem that we've seen a lot in sci-fi and
Right.
fantasy, where you cure disability, like that's the utopia,
Oh, yeah.
and
And it's
I
like, that's not the
hate
case
that too.
either.
No,
That's not the
I mean,
case either, but it's like you're telling me that we can't figure out a better way to do this. Like you guys have all
yeah.
these resources at your hands and we can't
Well,
figure out a better way to do this.
it's like the incredibly stupid shit where they put a saddle on her dragon at the end so she can strap herself on and doesn't fall off. Why the fuck isn't everyone wearing a saddle on these things? Like, why are you putting yourself into?
Where are the seatbelts?
I am fine with an amount of suspension of disbelief in fantasy. That's normal. But when you're constantly contradicting your own points, it becomes frustrating.
Yes, exactly. And again, like so much of the her day to day requires her having energy, and you're absolutely on point. When you are in pain chronically, you don't have energy. You
Yeah.
can't get up at 5 a.m. to do rounds of breakfast, right? It just like that's just not how it conceivably works
Yeah.
as like somebody who lived for what, oh shit, fuck, like 27 years without the medication I needed just to like function day to day. Like you're
Hmm.
just exhausted. That's it.
Hmm.
You're just exhausted all of the time. You're snappish, you're depressed, you're exhausted. And so when you read through this, it's like you said, it's irresponsible.
Yeah. Right. What was the thing that pissed you off? I've had my rant. Sorry, that was a proper little rant there.
Yeah, I just like. This is gonna be a tougher point to cover definitely for the stream. So I'm gonna get to. She introduces the concept of contraception very early on. Okay.
Okay.
And I have a big problem with that because the introduction in a romance novel of
Hmm.
contraception amidst a romance novel introduces the concept of it failing.
Yes.
And so, like, I get that you come like in a real world romance novel, you definitely have to answer that question. But this is fantasy. This is fantasy.
Hmm.
We don't have to introduce this. We don't have to go down this road. And no, there is no like pregnancy plot line.
You
But
thought there
there's
was going to
like
be.
I was listen after their first. Oh my god, he was the sexiest sex to ever sex dick penis cock. I was like, all right, here we go, here we go. We're gonna have a
Hmm.
bukkake scene, and we're gonna have a pregnancy like in this novel because it reads a lot like a fan fiction. That like it reads a lot like an large cast anime high school fan fiction in some of the
Yep.
interactions, and I'm like, all right, well, let's see if we're covering this trope. I could see believably in the logic of the world the military being like, well, she's the most powerful dragon rider and so is he, and they're a bonded pair. So we're going to make
Yeah.
them make babies, right?
Yeah. Sounds like a par for the course.
And so like it just oh man, I was glad to see we did not have the pregnancy plot line, but it still feels like it's very much a possibility. And I wish we never needed to say anything about that. We
They
could have
didn't need
just
to
left that
bother.
completely out. We didn't need it.
Absolutely.
I could believably have just thought, I don't know why, maybe they're sterile, not my problem. This is a fantasy book and I'm willing to suspend disbelief on that bad boy. Maybe he's so good at sex at the age of 20, he's great at pulling out. That's none of my fucking business. None of my business.
That is very true. Yes. Didn't love that.
Well, it breaks the fantasy feel to it. It's like, when we have to deal with do the characters go to the bathroom?
I mean, I imagine
Sometimes
you did.
sometimes you don't like when you think about writing like your character's day, you don't need to narrate every shit they take, right? Like we do a lot of tell don't show, and we do a lot of like being given a lot of information that could be useful, but like I could feel it in the wings. I'm like, oh god, if there's a pregnancy plot in this book, oh my god, you know.
You had the
And
dread in you.
oh, yeah. It just a lot of the show don't tell in this book, or sorry, the lack of show don't tell, and that's not always the right course to go down per se. But in a lot of the cases, there are moments where this book like could have just shown us what was happening between the two of them. The dialogue
Hmm.
could have been good, and instead we just tell.
Hmm. And every time it tells us lies as well. She's the
Yeah,
smartest person. She's the smartest person you've ever met. Then you need to meet more people. He
yeah,
was the
like
sexiest man I'd ever seen. Have you tried looking outside of the college that you've been staying in your entire life?
yeah. Right? Like, have you looked past Doorknob, the boy wonder from your childhood?
Oh my god, that fucking guy.
Let me tell you, that poor autistic soul, and he just wanted to follow the fucking rules, right? He just
And
wanted to
she was
follow the
so
rules.
personally offended when she was like, "So you wouldn't have saved me by throwing away your entire career and getting executed?" No, no, I wouldn't have. I would have followed the fucking rules. How
Sorry,
could
not
you?
sorry. How
Betrayal the
could you?
first.
And you're like, this poor kid. Like, I'm sorry, honey. Like, just go back to whatever other girlfriend you had before the girl next door showed back up. Have the conversation with her and just
Well,
let it go.
sadly, he cannot do that because within
Cause
5 minutes of our lovely main character showing up, she got his girlfriend executed. Because not only does she have to be the prettiest girl, the center of attention for every single man in the story, all the women that don't completely support us in this endeavor must die.
Pretty much. You're just like, oh my god, did we really do this? Like, we completely. Hang on. I forgot to write about this in my notes. I have another beef.
All right, here we go.
We never fully discussed the fact that she rides the dragon of her brother's best friend. Like, this, who died? They died together. Teared. Like, we're not going to talk about this? We didn't talk. There was no discussion of it. Even when we get to the big reveal at the end, which, all right, here we go. One more spoiler. Her brother's not actually dead. We get to the big fucking reveal at the end, and we never cover the fact that she rides his best friend's dragon.
That seems like it would come up.
She's all sad about this. Oh, my brother's so dead. I'm so sad about it. I have nothing but this singular tome, Ned's School Survival Guide from him because of the weird military bullshit. But we're never going to talk about this.
It's just not going to come up. Oh my god, the whole thing with the brother being dead as well, where throughout the whole thing you're like, is he though? Because we never see a
Is he
body, and we never
We
really.
didn't see the body. We're already setting it up for We Are the Fire Nation. This is
Yeah,
propaganda.
Oh man, and I mean, again, the propaganda aspect very well handled. The rest of the story not very well handled. It
Yeah.
just what was it the youth say? It needed more time to cook. It needed more.
Yes. Jesse, we need to cook.
Yes, it just didn't. It just didn't fucking work. The whole fucking book. It was just a series of it didn't work. It didn't work. It didn't work. It didn't work. And as chat has been mentioning, rides the dragon of her brother's best friend does sound sexual because the sexiest bits in this book were not the fucking awful purple prose sex scenes. It was shit like, oh my god, I can't ride this dragon. It's too big for me. I need you to strap my thighs down onto this giant dragon so that I can fly. What the fuck? And one more thing. The tagline on the front of the book, graduate or die. Get fucked. It's about riding dragons. Fly or die.
Fly or die.
How hard is it? Fly or die.
Literally. The biggest plot point of her having to maintain a seat on the dragon, and this is what you came up with. I think they wanted this to be, I take it back, not the Hunger Games. They wanted this to be Charlemagne's. Mm-hmm. They wanted it to be that. I get high or die. Yes.
Skullman's
only if there's only. They were great books. It wanted to be that. But the thing that made them
great... It had a great romance and great fantasy and great everything this book wanted to be.
Yes, exactly. And the thing that made it great, though, is that the main character, when she did a bad thing, was like, I did a fucking bad thing, and I'm a bad bitch for it. And then she was like, oh shit, actions, they have consequences, and now I feel bad. Yeah. Right? And we see the full development of that.
And she grows into an actual person. And then they kind of drop the ball in the third book, like Novik did in the Entangled, but Uprooted even, whatever it was called. Interestingly, Naomi Novik, before writing the Scholomance books, wrote a Dragon Rider series called Temeraire. And they were a much better Dragon Rider series than this piece of shit. And they were set during the Napoleonic War, and dragons were being used like naval vessels, except in the sky. And you had like a whole crew of people on every dragon. Like you had the gunners, and you had the person steering, and you also had the dragon as a thinking, conscious creature that could disagree with people and actually be interesting, as opposed to being a plot point.
Yeah. I haven't read the Timer. I think I'll have to pick it up, honestly. It just, like, even the cover of the book's similar. Like, her final. Like, the Golden Enclaves and Fourth Wing.
Oh, so good. I really enjoyed. Yeah, but no, they're very similar, the Golden Enclaves and Fourth Wing's cover.
Again, I think that's on purpose they're trying to, not necessarily, no. I think from a marketing perspective, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
not
in a forward way.
You try and copy what's winning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh yeah, those books did so well, and they're like, well, the covers kind of look a little.
Mhm.
This is by no means was this intentional by the author. I don't think so at all.
No,
Um,
I don't think a lot of the things that are wrong with this book are intentional on the part of the author. I
no.
genuinely just think it's the circumstances have produced this book in the way that it's been produced.
Yep. And it concerns me also when we think about the fact that the first and the second one published in the same year. Like, they need time to
Uh,
cook.
Now,
When you read the first one and you realize how uncooked it is, like, I'm not saying publishing the two in a series in the same year is a problem until you add in the quality of this one.
okay, here's the thing. Because of the rate that traditional publishing goes, my hands move, I'm sorry. Because of the rate that
Oh,
traditional
I'm doing the
publishing
same
goes at,
thing.
okay, cool. Because of the rate that traditional publishing goes at, it's quite possible that they had the first book for maybe 3, 4 years before it came out, and
Yeah.
they were sitting on book two for most of that time as well. And because they saw how successful the first book was, they churned out the second one quicker. Like
Fair. Again, same
it's quite
problem.
possible. At the same time, I see a lot of people in this right to market romance section who do churn out books really fast because basically they're just ticking boxes. Again, they don't have to, like, they know the full plot arc of every single book that they're going to write. It goes along a bit, it goes down, and it goes up again. Like, here is where there's the betrayal, here's where there's the, coming back together, here's where they end up. And it's identical in every single one of these books. And if you read literally any of one of these sort of indie published, churn out as many as you can, romance books, you're going to get them. And that's just this done on a grander scale.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's not a huge surprise to me that a second book came out in a year. And honestly, if I were to suddenly receive the giant lump of fucking money that the author of Fourth Wing had received, I'd probably drop everything and get my ass into the desk and get another book out as well.
Fair enough. I just, I think about how uncooked this one is and how much it could have used, like, just one, like, just go spend an afternoon with some teenagers, please, and listen to them talk.
I think it needed a couple of things to be good. One of
Yeah.
them was having someone with experience with fantasy in the room instead of just romance. And
Yeah.
the other thing it really needed was someone that actually gave a shit about it. Like someone who was invested in the characters, someone who was invested in the setting and story to say, hey, this stuff doesn't quite add up. Because if it had that and she'd had that little bit of pushback, the book could have been so much better.
Yeah. It
As
could
it
have been,
is,
like, it has the seedlings of a really good book.
yeah, that's it. It's got some really solid ideas. It has some really fun concepts, and it just really drops the ball because of a lack of understanding of the genre it's writing in.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Once
it's
again, as
fine
always, the bad guy is capitalism.
always, always, always. Or in this case, it's capitalism and the military industrial complex. But also, um, at the same time, every single person in the military as an individual is a hero. Every
Mm-hmm.
single one of them. So, thank them for their service, riding dragons and being renegades dressed in their lovely black armor. And Jesus fucking Christ.
And,
This
like,
book,
if,
okay, I've
if,
got to be honest with you. Every time I had to pick up this book, I was unhappy. And
yeah.
I'm not going to shit on anyone that enjoyed it, but I didn't have fun.
Yeah. I think that, like, to kind of start to dovetail everything into final points, I think this could have been a really good book. I think it needed some, like Sam saying in the chat, some constructive criticism. I think it definitely suffers from being an undergraduate work that needed to not be fantasy if it was going to be what it is, right? This is what happens when you let undergrads write fantasy. Fantasy.
I don't know about that. I don't. I have not seen enough undergrad fantasy to make the connection personally, but I will
I
say
have.
that I think that she definitely needed more time reading fantasy to understand the genre a wee bit better, instead of
Agreed.
just ticking the boxes, going down the bestsellers list, and writing whatever the mishmash of those was.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a fair point. It needed more time. It could have been a very good book. If you enjoyed Fourth Wing, by all means, thank
Yeah,
you.
this is it.
Wonderful.
There's the seed.
Good.
There are the seeds of a good book in there, and it's got some cool
Mhm.
ideas. And if they just address things a little bit differently, I think it would have been fine. Now, if you'll excuse me one moment, we'll have to address a question in the chat. On the topic of better books, which Penman book would you recommend I start with? Amanda, which Penman book would you recommend to start with?
Well, I started with the Dungeons of Strata, and I very much enjoy those. I think that you'll enjoy the dungeon core style of it. I think.
Well,
Um,
it's not exactly a dungeon core book. It's a dungeon. It's a very
it's
dungeon focused book, certainly.
it's dungeon focused, yes. So I think that you'll enjoy it. There's three of them. The final entry to the series, final entry, right?
Yep, I'm done. No more Ratman.
The final entry to the series did just recently come out. If you enjoy RPG games, if you enjoy fantasy, if you enjoy just a book that has a narrator that's really just fun to watch, right? And all of his Ratman. Yep, pretty much. So pick up Ratman, 100%. Dungeons of Strata, that's a great place to start. That was
Thank you very much.
yes. Also, they have recently published. Don't worry, I will talk about your work.
Thank you.
They have
Well, that's
recently
what you're here
published
for. I mean, that's.
at the drop of a hat. Which, if you want to go ahead and tell a little more about that one.
Oh, it's not lit RPG or anything like that. It's a sort of spoof comedy fantasy about a talking wizard's hat that ends up riding around on a kobold. So it's very silly. It's got little quests. It's very low stakes, and it's what I kind of wish I could read more of. So that's why we wrote it. I was me and Luke Shmalenko did that one.
There you go. So pick up either. And if I ever get my ass in gear and get things done, don't worry. We'll talk about the.
I assure you, you're going to get your ass in gear and you're going to get things done. That book is coming out.
I, I am so excited to be on that journey. So I did not take your advice, by the way, and I am one chapter away from being able to work on it again because I
Yeah, that
was
sounds about par for the course.
3 chapters away this morning from being able to start it. Now I am one chapter away from going to editing. So, but with that being said,
I think we've done all the shitting we can shit on this book.
I think so. I think we were
Well,
pretty generous about it.
I think we did our best for it. You had an issue with the gays in it.
Oh, right. Yeah, she just kind of waves at gay people. Hey, let me throw one in there. And then we don't talk about it ever again.
And it's
Rhiannon
not
has sex with her upperclassman, and then, like, a chapter later is completely straight. So, okay.
Yep, it happens.
Cool.
Cool. I mean, they're at college. It's not queer
I
baiting.
wouldn't
It's
even say
more.
it's queer baiting. Just,
It really just
hello.
felt
I
like.
love gays.
Yeah, that's what it felt like. It feels like the author's fucking liberal. That's what it feels like.
I think that the only thing she could have done worse was given her a gay best friend.
I think, honestly, she was about a sneeze away from it. Like the guy, Jesus, what's his name? He died for her
Liam.
sins. Liam, yeah, I
Yeah.
think he was about a sneeze away from being her gay best friend. Like particularly when they go to a dinner party and he starts getting sassy. It's like, oh, here we go.
Here we go. The dinner party was so bad I forgot about it.
I wish I could forget about it. I wish I could forget everything about this. But it's just
But
going to sit in my brain forever now. Thank you so much for that.
you're welcome. What are we thinking about picking up for next month? Do we have any
Yes.
ideas?
Chat, please make a suggestion. What book should we read?
Yes.
Someone, Jesus. Because if you don't make a suggestion, I'm going to go through my bookshelf and find something that I know Amanda's never read before, and she is not going to have a good time.
I have a great time all the time. I don't know what you're talking about.
I'm going to pick some really grody old fantasy book that people with like yellowed fingernails and a tobacco stained beard. Fane, you just suggest any book you like and you want to hear us talk about. and we will go and read it and talk about it.
Yes. And or a book you like, or a book you want us to talk about.
Yes, that's also good. If there's a book that you want eviscerated, then by all means, but send it our way. But
Ah,
I might make you read the fucking Drizzt books if we don't get a good suggestion.
I don't know what those are. I did try to read the Dune books, and they were too boring for me.
Oh
Oh man.
no, Graceling. Okay,
I tried.
I bounced off Graceling as well, so maybe that.
Oh, I read Graceling when it came out. I love it. I have a hard copy downstairs.
Okay, you like Graceling. I didn't like Graceling. This is going to be a good argument.
I haven't read this book in 15 years. I'm so excited.
Okay, that's going to be a fun time.
Awesome. Hey, thank you so much, Fane. This is going to be great. I'm
Much
so excited.
appreciated. Yeah.
Oh,
I.
man. We get another potential pregnancy plotline note
Uh oh.
in Graceling.
Oh no. Don't do that.
All right.
Okay. Thank you
Awesome.
very much, everyone.
Thank you, chat.
Um.
We
And
will
we
see you
will.
all in 4 weeks for this,
Well,
and then next week for
what are we doing next week?
Star
We are
Drop
playing
Saloon.
Stardew Valley next week. Yes,
Yes.
Star
So
Drop Brunch. Except it's not going to be brunch anymore 'cause it's going to be in the afternoon. So I don't know what we're going to do. But if you want
that's
to
fine.
come and watch us playing Stardew Valley and arguing about pointless shit, yes,
Yeah.
the hyperfixation.
Um.
Same time every
Same
week from
time
now
every
on.
week now. Yep.
It's
We decided it would be a little more easier to be consistent.
and it's pinned to American time. So when their clocks change, we get thrown off because fuck us, right? It will be 8 p.m. next week, and then eventually the clocks will change for America and it'll become 7 p.m. But 8 p.m. from
Ah,
now until we tell you it's not going to be 8 p.m.
I
Listen,
have a
you
nice note in
colonials.
my.
Sorry, go on.
I was gonna say I have a note in my phone of potential topics for while we're playing Stardew. The first one is human composting.
Oh, excellent. I am sad to say I
Oh,
know quite a lot about human composting, so we're going to have a good
that's,
chat about that.
oh, I'm so excited. So, all right, we'll see you guys this same time next week. Here, 8 p.m. GMT, right? GMT?
Yes. Greenwich
And 3
Mean
p.m.
Time.
EST. Yes.
Yes.
To Stardew and talk about human composting. So,
Well, Fane, we sincerely hope that you're around, but if you miss us, don't worry. Yes, Caitlin Doty has a great video on human composting. And yes, we will maybe see you next week. And if we don't, then you can always catch us on YouTube.
exactly. So, well, thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful time. Have a wonderful day.
Cheerio.
And we're going to sign off.